Hello and welcome to the aForm Show, the premier podcast for all things architecture and design across the MENA region. Welcome to your tribe. Hello and welcome to the show, everyone. Today's guest is Nick Farmer, Managing Director of Urban Edge Strategic, a consultancy focused on real estate strategy and development advisory. With more than 2 decades of experience across residential development and corporate communications, Nick combines commercial insight with a strong understanding of how narrative and positioning shape successful projects. Urban Edge Strategic works with developers and investors to sharpen project strategy, brand, and long-term value in increasingly competitive real estate markets. So without further ado, let's get into it. Welcome to the show, Nick.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Thanks for reaching out to me the other week. It's a pleasure to chat. I think, we got in touch because you read one of my articles on LinkedIn. So it's good to know that I have at least one reader on one article. Who knows?
I'm pretty sure you have more than one.
Well, that's very kind.
But I think that's maybe a good starting point. I think that article sort of set the wheels in motion, at least for me. And for our audience who probably have no idea what we're talking about, could you maybe give them a sort of brief summary of what you were trying to address?
Yeah, so I wrote an article called, I think the title was Transactional Inventory is a Strategic Dead End, and we need to shift our focus much more onto intentional real estate. And I think the point that I was trying to make is in an upward market, which I think we've all experienced now for the past 4 years, it's been on a rapid trajectory. You can get away with maxing out your GFA on studios and one beds and just rolling out boom, 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 one after the next, one after the next, one after the next. But that's good up to a point. And then because we've had this sort of high volume, high velocity launch cadence, particularly in Dubai in 2025, I think where a project was launched every 13 hours.
Yeah.
The priority has been velocity over value. And then we're going to start seeing the impact now of all this product coming into the market, very little to differentiate it. As margin pressures become greater, of course, savings and economies have to be found. And I'm pretty sure that is going to be in the adjacent areas of the building. So whether that's the public realm, whether that's the amenities, whether it's the common facilities. And I don't think buyers are going to be that satisfied with that. And my view was now more than ever is you need a strategy that can take you beyond the cycle. I look at some interesting product out there, and where I think people have really focused in on those public spaces, those value add services, it's not enough just to put a gym in a building. You have to put a gym, a fitness studio, a fitness pavilion, however you want to brand it, but it has to be a credible alternative for your residents than spending 900 dirhams a month, 1,000 dirhams a month on a gym membership somewhere else. I live in an old residential villa compound in Jumeirah, and I love it. It gives me exactly what I need. The house is perfectly proportioned for my family. The common areas are great. The pool is lovely. It's got a gym. Do I use that gym? Hardly ever. My kids use the gym a bit. My wife doesn't use it. She pays about 1,000 dirhams for a gym membership just down the road, and I pay about the same for another gym membership because that gym does not service my need. If it did, and if it serviced my wife, that's 2,000 dirhams a month, 24,000 dirhams a year. That's a term school fee and change, right?
100%.
That's what I'm saying. For me, that is intentional real estate.
Right.
And that's the difference between, in the modern sense, transactional real estate or transactional inventory and intentional real estate.
Right.
I often think this about when you see these apartment buildings with rooftop swimming pools. It's never really about the swimming pool. It's about how you program around the swimming pool, because it's a given that an apartment building will have a swimming pool.
Yeah.
But it's what you do on the deck, how you position the lounges, is there a gym up there? You know what I'm saying?
It's more sort of tailored to the lifestyle around the service rather than the actual service itself. That makes a lot of sense. For a lot of our audience who are probably designers and are kind of shouting very quietly, yes, I agree. I suppose the very obvious question is that, at least on our side, which is kind of more the design side of things, there seems to be a constant uphill battle when it comes to most developers, I would say, especially in the region, in the city to be more specific. And while for the marketing brochure, it's more than welcome to use whatever finish you want and, whatever makes it look really good and so on and so forth. When it comes to actually delivering this on site, there tends to be a lot of compromise to an extent. But even before we reach that stage, what I've found from my experience with a lot of resi work is if you do want to introduce something which is in the public realm of, say, a residential building, and it is at a quote unquote unquote expense of GFA or built up area, the very first question that comes up is, what's the ROI on it? And I suppose my question very bluntly is there a calculatable return on these public spaces which would otherwise be sellable GFA?
Yes, but.
That's already a good enough answer.
I think it's yes, but you have to work harder for it. Or more accurately, yes, but you have to work harder to demonstrate it. And I think it's very difficult to show that when you are... So let's think about particularly your kind of small and more speculative developers or your small and mid-tier developers. Very good chance that what they're doing is going, okay, right, we've got a plot here with an assumed maximum either BUA or GFA. And then if they've got their max BUA, they'll take a GFA assumption from that, and then they'll take a sellable assumption from that. And then they'll sort of think, okay, right, well, how much is it going to cost to build all that? And then what are some of the comps that we can maybe get to? And they'll work out everything based on that.
Yeah.
But there's no vision there.
Yeah.
There's no, okay, if we've got this, I don't know, 15,000 square foot plot in, for argument's sake, Nadashiba Gardens, whereby we know that we can do 2 levels of podium, 6 floors of residential, probably get a rooftop pool in there. But what does that actually want to look like before you even commit to anything? Because then if you at least I don't know, whether you're working for a family business or a corporate, whether you're an in-house development guy or an external consultant trying to pitch an idea, if you get a lot of this stuff out of the way first, before any check is cut or any cash put down, it should be easier. And I think, measure twice, cut once, or you wouldn't build without a setting out point.
Yeah.
If your development has a vision as your setting out point and a clearly articulated and understandable vision, then I think it's much easier. And I think it's also understanding that what is our role as a developer here? Is our role to make all of the money? Or is it just to make most of the money and then allow our primary customers the opportunity to make some money? Because the way I see it is that ROI in the great public realm areas, as the developer, you make it if you're holding on to some of that inventory. But the ROI on that really, if you're in a develop to sell product, is for the primary customers, because you want them to make some money. Why do I want them to make some money? Because they feel good about that. And there's a greater chance that they're going to be my repeat client. So on the calculatable ROI for that much better public realm, yes, but probably for someone else.
Yes.
But that will then come back to me.
Yes. I mean, it's a very clear way that you've articulated that, and I thank you for it. I will use it moving forward. Yes, but I suppose then the next sort of obvious question would be, and again, this is considered purely my ignorance, would something like legacy play into this as well? Because I'm thinking of, obviously you have the larger players who by definition are in it for the long haul and therefore would probably be a lot more curated towards what they put out because they want to build, quote unquote, some kind of a legacy moving forward. Whereas I suspect in Dubai, pretty much anyone with a few million in the bank would probably call themselves a developer at this point.
Yes. If you've got enough cash and you've got enough ego, you can do it. Yeah.
Exactly. And they're probably not motivated about legacy or even thinking about legacy. So I suppose the question is, what should developers be looking at? What's the kind of right motivations that they should be looking at when they're looking at developing the parcels that they have?
Yeah. I mean, look, everyone's going to have a different motivation, but everyone has always had a different motivation right from the very beginning of all of this. I think, again, it's so hard, right? Because we've been in an incredibly high tempo rising market now for so long that everything has always sold. Everything has always sold off a picture, off an idea. And then the reality hits. And sure, not everyone can afford to build or develop for legacy. But that's always been true. Then it comes down to the client or the customer, the purchaser. And then you have a clear choice. Do you want to buy into something that is clearly designed to endure? Or do you want to buy into something that is really designed to get through this cycle? And either approach is fine, as long as we're honest about it. And as long as the buyer understands what they're purchasing. I think part of the trouble is there's so much undifferentiated stock being put out into, well, it's not even stock, right? Because it's not even landed on the market. There's just so much undifferentiated stuff out on the market that it's very hard to tell what's what. But if you are able to cut out of the noise, what I think is really exciting about this market, it used to be, like if we take Dubai, it used to be you only had a couple of choices, right? The big mega developers.
Yeah.
But if you work really hard, you can find some really cool products. I wish I'd thought of it before so I could check the developer name up, because there's a product near the water in Dubai called, I think it's called Sea Mirror, for example. I think the developer is called just simply LD, small boutique. They've got a boutique hotel in Jumeirah Garden City. Right. They're now developing a residential product. I think it's called Sea Mirror. I have no affiliation with this product whatsoever, but it's really cool. And it's really intentional. It's architecturally interesting, whether it's the curves on the archways, their approach to the hospitality offering. It's, even their hotel rooms look more like kind of bunk rooms because they're geared around work from anywhere professionals, digital nomads, whatever we want to call them, people that are kind of dipping in and dipping out. And I think they will take that approach into their pure play residential product. Now, a couple of years ago, you probably wouldn't have given people like that a second thought. But now I think as people are looking at the market and seeing so much noise, so much volume, so much hype, I think people are also becoming more skeptical of that. Now, that's not to say that they won't buy, but I think people do want to do their homework. And I think, unfortunately, it's because, we've all been so inundated with broker calls saying, do you want to buy this? Do you want to buy this?
It's almost like fast food, right?
Well, it is almost like fast food. And I think accordingly, people are starting to get really turned off by that and going, you know what? I now need to do my own research so that I can firmly say, no, this is not for me. Or hopefully that, and pick up the phone to the people that they do like the look of things of and go, look, I've actually done some research into this product of yours. I'm interested in it because of 1, 2, 3. And you know what? It's going to be much easier for the sales guys.
Yeah, because you're pretty much already bought in by that point. Yeah.
And like a lot of us, although hardly any of us, I suspect, have had any calls over the last 10 days. But prior to that, I've got very good at saying no to people, but I've also got very good at saying yes when it's something that's interesting of me. And I am someone that will study floor plans. I will study floor plates. I will look at the area. I will go and drive. But if it's in Dubai, I will go and drive around the area, and I'm not in the market at the moment. I'm sort of watching and seeing, because I think there are going to be some good opportunities to buy at perhaps a bit of a lower price, or rather, get more for less. I think it's really interesting because I think there's a few players out there. I really like what the Hive guys have done. They've got that incredible co-living product in JVC, but they're expanding out into develop to sell product. They've got one up in Ras Al Khaimah.
Yeah.
And that looks like nothing else up in RAK because, we've seen a lot of the new stock up there to kind of cater to or kind of take advantage of that market since 2022. Whereas the Enter product, it's really intentional. The co-work, co-live facilities that they're doing with RAK Properties, who I do have an affiliation. I do work with RAK Properties, just to put that out there. It's really interesting because they've thought about the end user and they've thought about a product that's going to endure. They've thought beyond the cycle. And what is the next wave of occupants and residents going to need in that market? Because we know that there's not a lot of Cat A or Grade A office facilities, but we know that is a market that is going to continue to attract more and more digital nomads, more and more work from anywhere professionals. And, I think for anyone that spends a lot of their time, working from home or remote working, the opportunity to work around other people that are doing interesting things, the opportunity to find spaces where you can kind of coalesce around an idea become more and more valued. Now, again, if you're a developer, is there calculatable ROI on that? If you have a really good space that allows people to meet, gather, work together, share ideas, there's calculatable ROI in that because people want to be close to that. Maybe you don't get it in that building, but maybe if you own the plot next door and you develop a product there, you get the calculatable ROI because guess what? I'm now developing a product that's next to this new hub, this new center of where people actually want to be. And that's how agglomeration economies form, right? So,
number one, Hive at JVC is probably one of my favorite projects, I would think. Bass is a good friend of the show. He's kind of been on a couple of times, and we've debated the sort of build to sell versus build to rent model quite extensively. I can see how, if I were a developer, I can see how if I'm thinking of a build to rent model, I can see how I am incentivized to think along those lines, which is you are thinking beyond the cycle. Rightly so, because it's going to be on your books. But if you are in that sort of build to sell, I can see how it's probably not the top of the list of things. So I suppose the question is, I see a lot of inventory, as you say, which is in fact designed to sell. Do you think developers need some kind of incentive to sort of look at the renting model again and maybe keep things on their books rather than have it completely sell out.
Yeah, but you've got to be brave, right? I mean, pure play build to rent when there was no active, viable freehold selling market was a given. I mean, this city's built on that, right?
Yeah.
And then obviously you have the freehold, the free zone wave, which has been incredibly successful on a whole number of fronts, right? You know, if you own your home, you feel more stable, you're more likely to be long-term, it becomes less transient, it becomes a much more settled environment, and you can build meaningful community off that. Of course, you can build meaningful community off the rental model, but I guess it's about having a mix. Should developers, you know, start to consider build to rent? Yeah, I think if it makes sense. I mean, that's been the model for a long time for certainly the large multi-platform developers, right? Because, you know, development revenue by its very nature is very lumpy.
Yeah.
You build a recurring revenue platform as defense against that, right? To smooth out those revenue flows. So that, of course, makes a lot of sense. Do you have to be like a multi-billion dirham publicly traded stock to do that? No, probably not. Again, all this kind of stuff comes back to what is your development vision? What can your feasibility support?
Yeah.
And knowing that before you're committed.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it's measure twice, cut once, right?
True.
So I think there's a massive opportunity. I mean, if I was looking at a project with a potential client a while back, and we were looking at exactly that. We were trying to come up with this really cool sport and wellness first product with a residential component attached. And part of that model that we were looking at was, you know, yes, we wanted sales, but we also wanted to retain a portion of the inventory. But then because the sport and wellness brand, which I won't say the name, was very strong in the sport and well, we thought they would have a natural lifestyle spillover into managing the residential. So actually, from the business plan side, you know, we thought it was great because we'd be able to apply a premium on the residential sales because it's attached to the sport and wellness brand.
True.
We're retaining some of the inventory that we want to rent out because we believe in the product, which we felt would inspire further confidence in the sales because there's a level of underwriting there. Not so much that it looks like we don't think it can sell, but enough to keep a little bit of skin in the game. But then because, again, we're very focused on, we know through the sport and wellness side of the brand and the hospitality side of the brand, people would then probably pay a premium to have their unit managed by us or by the client. We felt that was really interesting. I mean, we continue to try and identify the right land and the right time and the right market for that opportunity. But we were very confident in that. And some of the early feedback we had around that was very supportive. So yeah, I mean, I think you can't just look at a desale model, but also I think you don't want to walk into the rental model accidentally.
Right.
It's not just about, all right, well, I've sold 90% of the inventory. I've got 10% left, all on different floors, and I'm just going to rent those out. Because actually, that's going to be a real pain to manage. But if you set out with it deliberately and you go, right, okay, I've got for example, I don't know, 10 floors of residential. Maybe I keep 1 or 2 floors back for me. Now, all of a sudden, I've got a much better control of my environment. If I'm servicing it or whatever, at least I know that, you know, my operations team don't have to go too far. I might factor that in terms of my storage so that all my storage stuff and whatever is there. So it's close and proximate. And those 2 floors I might design slightly differently anyway, you know, whether it's the finishing or whatnot. So I can get some
added
economy.
value.
I can create some added value there. So I think a lot of it, it's all about intent and being deliberate and having purpose. Again, this sense of intentional real estate. You know, we've got transactional inventory, intentional real estate, but it's really just avoiding accident and avoiding surprise and, you know, being deliberate and being planned so that you don't get these surprises halfway down the track or later and going, what did I do there?
Yeah, I think for me, what I've sort of struggled with over the last couple of years, being someone who's born and raised here and kind of spent pretty much all my life in this city. Yeah. And as an architect, I struggle with the volume of mediocrity, I suppose, of products that I see coming on. And especially when, as an architect, I can see that there's very small things that could have been done to dramatically change the end product. An example that I keep bringing up is for one of these, I think it was a G+8 or G+12 building, we were sort of, we as in all the stakeholders were sort of pushed in program because there was a specific launch date, a sell date, et cetera, which is fine. But this was a lot tighter than even normal, I would say. And I was sure that had we gotten another 2-3 weeks to just do a structural analysis, I'm not even touching aesthetics yet. I'm just talking steel concrete, right? Had we just done that and made the structure a little more efficient, there would have been significant saving. But that opportunity never really came up because of the deadline. Fortunately, I actually did that study later on and were able to quite literally show them, be like, listen, there was a couple of million in savings here, which could have been used for a better facade or better entrance lobby or whatever it may be. And had we just had the time, we would have been able to kind of massage that in. So I kind of struggle with that conversation with developers, wherein obviously there is a larger sort of master timeline program where everyone's working towards. But I feel, this, you can happily correct me, I feel that the design side should get a bit more time, especially if you want to stand out in a market like this. Or is that just me being...
No,
utopian?
No, you're not. You're absolutely right. That is the big challenge. And I think in a fast moving market, everything becomes so much more compressed. Like, you don't sell out in a week. Oh, it's a failure. You haven't achieved a certain efficiency percentage. Oh, it's, you know what I mean? Like, or you've missed your launch date by a day. No, I don't think you're being idealist at all. I think there is if you have to launch at concept, of course, that's the risk that you take, right? Because there are so many things that can change by the time you get to the end of schematic, heck, even by the end of detail, right? From there, unless you're really, really disciplined. I think, and coming back to your point about, this sort of mediocrity point, it's actually so much harder to aim for mediocrity than it is to aim for something really good. Why? Because everything you do becomes that much harder. You rush it, right? That means that you perhaps launch before you're ready. Means that you launch perhaps before you have a good sense of what you're actually building, because you don't know what the cost is, because you haven't identified that 2 million in savings, right?
Yeah.
So it just becomes that much harder to rectify that. It becomes that much harder to justify your future decisions. Whereas if you actually spend that little bit of time up front, it makes everything that much easier. I used to do a bit of boxing when I was younger, and it was that classic thing, train hard, fight easy. Whereas that is advice that should be given to every single developer. Put in the work at the start. Yeah. Because that's the reality of real estate development. A lot of people think that the launch of a product to market is the beginning, the middle, or the path from idea to launch is the beginning, middle, and end of the race.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. If you're launching at a very early stage in design, then again, it becomes really hard because you want to start, you've collected some checks, whatever. So you want to start construction pretty soon.
Yeah.
But think about all the gateways you've got to get through before you can start construction. You've got to get through schematic. You've got to get through detail, IFTs, IFCs. There's so much work to get you there, and it's hard. And you're up against the clock, and it's all largely self-inflicted. You've not made it easier for yourself.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree with you. There are definitely things, but that's just really a question of governance.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, but I suspect that's going to change in 2026. I think there's going to be a bit more deliberation over products because people are going to have to be more deliberate.
Right.
Because when did this last big run start? It started with the end of COVID, right?
Yeah.
So what's that? 2022. So we're now coming into the fourth year since then. That first wave of product launch is starting to hit the market in terms of delivery. That's just going to keep coming for the next 2 to 3 years. So anyone developing now is going to be looking pretty closely at what that looks like, because, how things perform in the secondary market is, of course, going to impact your assumptions, particularly if you need bank financing. All of a sudden, all these developers who need external sources of capital and have to go and raise money, all those liquidity providers are going to be looking at some very real world examples of, okay, so what's your exit optionality going to look like? And they're going to look at the market and they're going to say, well, hold on, you're coming to me
saying that your product is X,
and we can see how it's performing. Now, all being well, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
There's a good chance that it will be. There's a good chance that it won't be, depending on what you do. So your requirements to come with a more differentiated product, a more fully fleshed out development vision, feasibility study, business plan becomes even more important. I think, I spend a lot of my time with people that work within the marketing disciplines of real estate development. And it's so funny because, easily dismissed, right? If you have a job that is about hard numbers, it's very easy to dismiss something that seems unquantifiable.
Because soft science.
Yeah, like a soft science. But the capital providers that I speak to, they talk in terms of narrative. They talk in terms of investment thesis. They talk in terms of power of brand. They get it.
Yeah.
But there's somewhere in the middle.
There's lost in
somewhere in the middle between, the people that want this stuff and the people that create this stuff.
Yeah.
Now, if you could cut out the middleman, then fantastic. and I'm sure if you put the architects directly next to the providers of capital, because it's a bit like when you meet a founder, right?
Yeah.
Of a startup, you know, people buy into that vision, right? People buy into that narrative. People buy into that enthusiasm.
Yes.
So yeah, that requirement for intent, deliberateness, huge.
Right.
If only we could see it. If only we could get out of our own way.
True. I'm almost tempted to ask then, again, because of our audience predominantly being architects and designers. And while I'm not asking for the secret sauce in any way, from what you're seeing in March of 2026 at the moment, what are sort of developers now looking at as we really want to have that? What is that? Because in my opinion, it sort of fluctuated. There was this whole sort of quiet luxury moment, and then there was wellness, or maybe wellness, then quiet luxury, or something like that. What is that today? What is sort of the gold standard? If we can get that, that'd be awesome.
I think, wellness, or my new favorite from the word salad that we see on billboards is, I can't remember who it was, and if I could remember, I wouldn't say the name, but it was being advertised as an integrative wellness resort. I have no idea what that means. What is integrative wellness? I don't know. I have no idea what that means, and I'm sure the people behind it have no idea what that means. One of the Business Breakfast Radio, Brandy Scott, I think we all know her voice, and she's very, very familiar with real estate development. She has unofficial title of Offies. If you win the Offies Award, which is the off-plan awards for craziest bit of jargon.
Wow.
And I think that says a lot about where we've come into in the market. What are we looking for? That sort of secret? I think we've got to get beyond the kind of word salad. I think we've got to, if I can't explain something to my dad, who's 82, then I've got a bit of a problem.
Right.
So you don't have to be all things to all people. Do the basics really well. Cover that. Because if you can't do that, how can we trust you to do...
Exactly. Anything more complex.
Exactly. So when we think about what we're offering moving forward, again, I just think it's about what do people actually want and what do people actually need? And it's not about saying that you're customer-centric or people-centric, because do you know who I've never heard use the term customer-centric? A customer. I don't know anyone that's gone, oh, I really like that, but they're so customer-centric. No, it's like they put my needs first. They listened. They understood what I want. I mean, as a development manager, I've done focus groups with customers where I've shown them pictures of floor plans at early stages. And what do you like about this? What do you not like about this? And, you know, this was a villa community in Abu Dhabi, and our target audience was primarily UAE nationals, but we also knew we were going to service other demographics as well. And you could pretty much draw a line down the middle of what the UAE nationals kind of wanted in terms of things like bedroom positioning. Did they want an extra bedroom on the ground floor for visiting relatives versus what, perhaps more broadly speaking, European purchasers wanted? So that was great. We refined the offering. We were able to stick within the same floor plate or villa layout or whatever, but we were able to refine some configurations in that. What we were actually able to offer was people the choice based on the bar, and we were able to rationalize the cost.
Yeah.
Now you need a developer of reasonable sophistication to be able to manage the back end of that.
Yes.
A bit like if you're doing multiple color schemes or FF&E packages. Again, it's all very well, but you can't go into this by accident.
Yes.
You've got to be very intentional on this. And it's not just about your front office. It's also about what you do behind. Do you have the systems in place? Do you have the discipline to track and manage that through the piece? So I think I'm not 100% sure I've answered the question.
No,
I've tried in a roundabout way. But again, it all comes back to, are we being intentional? Are we being deliberate? Because if we're being intentional, that means we're working towards a clear objective.
Right.
It means we're working towards a clear design path. It means we're working towards a clear launch program. It means we're working towards a clearly defined set of KPIs.
Yeah.
Then it's for me, that's all it comes down to. Just be deliberate, just be honest. And I don't mean honest in terms of, misleading people. I mean honest in terms of
to the craft.
Being honest to the craft of what do we want to build? Why do we want to build it? And for whom do we want to build it?
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I especially like the fact that I think what you mentioned briefly was you don't need to sell to everyone. No. And I think if you just kind of hold on to that and maybe at a very early stage, even in your marketing, if you kind of like really narrow down that niche and find out exactly who that demo is, it just makes all the decisions to follow a lot more easier, I would think.
Well, it allows you to lean in.
Yeah.
If you go, right, okay, this product is not for 80% of the people,
right,
but it's for the middle 20%.
Yeah.
What does that middle 20% want? And how do we really lean into that? Because then also it's fun.
Yeah.
Because you can be a bit creative about it. I mean, I remember taking a tour of an Ellington product in one of their ones in JVC. And it was like, it was great. And it wasn't great because there was anything particularly crazy out there about the product, but it was the natural result of good decisions agreed upon and well executed. But along the way, they'd found a few sort of charming ways to delight you as a customer. So, I think it was one of the ones they had a kind of kitchen island or the kitchen countertop. And it was just the way they'd put some plug sockets under the lip of the counter. That's just there, just kind of when you naturally need it. You're not constantly searching for, the socket's over there. So it's like, the end of this counter would actually be quite a nice place to stick my laptop.
Yeah.
But I don't really want to have to stretch my cable across the whole counter. Oh, but look, there's a plug socket and a USB socket just underneath. So as a developer, they'd thought about the lived experience. They'd thought beyond plan view. And they'd kind of thought a little bit more in 3D. And that was cool. And then I think a lot of people have started to see that and kind of think about, okay, how can we be more design-led, design first? I mean, I love working with architects, not necessarily on a program. But I love
100%.
But I love the passion and the vision, because I think the architects just want to keep us honest, right? The architects just want to keep us deliberate. The architects just want to keep us intentional. It's in that tussle that things can be really good. And, not all compromises have to be bad.
100%.
Sometimes it's just about meeting in the middle.
I mean, as much as I suppose the narrative for the designers is always like, but there's friction here and there's a brief here, etc., etc. I'm of the opinion that when there is a good product, an end product out there, I'm of the opinion that was not just good design in terms of a architect or whatever that designed it, but it was probably more important of a good/intentional client who kind of went along the journey.
Yeah.
And I think you still need that synergy. By no means I'm saying that the design side of the cycle has all the answers and everything would be perfect after that. But I do think that sort of compromised solution is probably the best product, in my opinion. But yeah, that's probably a conversation for another day.
Well, I mean, but it's the difference between saying, no, you can't do that, and saying, yes, if you want to do that, this is probably the way that we're going to have to do it.
Yeah.
Or rather just understanding what the constraints are in order to make it happen.
Yeah. It's true. Nick, I think we can obviously talk forever. This is...
I would like that, but I suspect your listeners would get bored of my voice.
No, I think they're having a pretty good time, I suppose. Typically at this point of the episode, we tend to look forward.
Yeah.
I don't really know what forward for Nick Farmer is at this point. I mean, if you were to sort of look ahead for the next 2 or 3 years, what are you looking to achieve yourself, for the business, for the real estate community at large? I don't know, but what are you sort of working towards?
What am I working towards? You know what? I'm having a lot of fun right now. I really enjoy this kind of consulting space that I'm in. That's not always incredibly easy to define, but what it does is the conversations with really interesting people are absolutely amazing. On any given day, I can be with an urban planner, a developer, an architect, even a sports club, all trying to look at how they can maximize the opportunity in real estate. Something I'd said to you before we started recording was I find myself increasingly existing in the sort of adjacency around pure play real estate development. And I think as the market, whether it remains as high tempo or even if it doesn't, it's probably still going to be just as competitive. It's finding those people that you can do really interesting. So for me, what does the next 2 years look like? I hope that I just get to continue working, interacting with as many interesting people as I have been recently, because that's when I think we all get to leave our mark on this city, right?
Yeah.
All I've ever wanted to do was have a meaningful contribution to the skyline of at least one of the cities in the UAE. I can say that in Abu Dhabi with a couple of the projects that I've worked on. I feel like I'm starting to get there in some of the other Emirates.
Nice.
And hopefully in 2 to 3 years I will.
Nice. That's a very meaningful goal to have. And that makes me happy as an architect. We need more of you out there.
I'm trying, man. I'm trying. I'm evangelizing for a different way to do development.
Yeah. All right. So as part of, it's not really our tradition, but we're now doing it. We have a question from one of our previous guests to you, not knowing who the next guest would be. And I'll pull it up right now. This is typically just a bit of fun to sort of end the episode, but you can sort of take your time with it.
Sure.
So I'll pull it up right now. Ooh, wow.
Am I going to have to think of a question for the next guest?
Yes.
Okay.
But you don't need to say it right now.
Okay, good.
Yeah. But yeah, this one I think is going to shoot us designers in the foot, but I'm going to say it out nonetheless. If you had to pick just one thing that you believe most designers lie/exaggerate about when talking about their work, what would that be? So, I mean, I want to say we're very optimistic about our renderings. But it could be so much more. Maybe lie is a bit harsh. Maybe exaggerate. What do you think most designers exaggerate about when you see their work?
Oh, maybe the context of the building, because we're all very good at fuzzing out what's happening around it.
That's true.
So that beautiful deck that's got perpetual sunshine, when everything's built around it, maybe not so much. I think also maybe less about the designers, but the meaning behind a name of a building.
Oh, yeah.
That could be it, because I think we all know it's very easy to retrofit a brand story around a name, but I think we all know that chances are that name just came out of desperation from somewhere because a whole bunch had been presented, no one liked anything, and someone was sent away and told, right, you got half an hour to give me 5 names to pick from. I will pick that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's probably the hardest, but it's not a lie, but it's just the reality that we live in. We all have to showcase our projects, and unfortunately a bunch of our projects are literally overshadowed by what's coming up next door.
Yeah. That's true. I think a lot of, now that I think of a lot of renderings that I've seen, for example, there's always a lack of realistic context. Some of them get it right. And to be honest, the ones that do get it right, for some reason, stand out better, in my opinion.
Because they've got the confidence, right?
Yeah, you're right. Wow, never really thought of that. But that's true. They do have the confidence. Wow. I'm blown away right now. That's such a interesting insight. Yeah. Well, on that note, I suppose why my mind is blown. I'd like to extend, obviously, a lot of thanks from our side, because the entire premise of the show is that we get people like yourselves to come on, donate the most important thing that you have, which is your time, and hopefully share some transparent insight. And hopefully, we believe people listening to this, at least one other architect is going to be like, you know what? I think I heard this episode with Nick. I think I'm going to try something else.
Well, that would make me so happy. And, thank you very much for having me. It's a real treat to share a microphone with you.
Awesome. I've never really heard that before, but I love it. Thank you so much for coming on. And for the rest of you guys, we will catch you guys next week. Fellow aFormer, thank you so much for your time. If this episode added any value to you, please share it with anyone who may benefit. If you want to carry on the discussion, please get in touch with us over socials. We are at aForm Show on the gram and hello@aform.studio on email. That is at aForm Show on the gram and hello@aform.studio on email. Until next time, stay inspired.